Win big in 2024 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the live draft assistant, free agent finder, and lineup optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They got free contests. They got paid contests coming to a state near you. They're slashing lines and giving out boosts all day long. Check it out. It's a fun platform. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you episode 134 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. We've got UFC 301 this weekend in Rio de Janeiro.
Break out the red panties.
Card's kicking off at 6 p.m. Eastern time on Saturday, so I will be in the RotoBaller MMA Discord from 4 p.m. onward. Come out, let's discuss what you're thinking for this card, betting-wise and DFS-wise. Let's talk about the outcomes as they're happening. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. That's where I make picks for all major MMA organizations, regional promotions, UFC Fight Pass events, major boxing matches. On Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on YouTube, Facebook, and Spotify. Like, subscribe, tell your friends. Check out the interlude episodes that I've been pumping out. Been some really interesting conversations on all sorts of things, including a Kentucky basketball conversation with Tristan Ferris of Kentucky Insider and a Sea of Blue. Folks, we got UFC 301 this weekend. The main event being the World Flyweight Championship between Alexander Pantoja and Steve Erceg. Now, we have 14 fights on this card. I'm going to try to, keep it as brief as possible for each, getting that right analysis in still. But I think we would be remiss if we did not talk about the matchup that is currently happening in Brazil. Alexander Pantoja, at this point, he's won 5 in a row dating back to 2021. It got the win that nobody, this guy is so quiet as a champion. And it's led a lot of people to deem him like the UFC's most boring champion or whatever it is, or least significant. But the guys that he's taken out on the way there, and after the whole Moreno-Figueiredo, series of fights, the fact that Kai Kara France, was so close there, Roy Vol has been so close at times. Starboy on a 4-fight winning streak. Everybody had him to be flyweight champion by the end of 2024 as a future, and it falls through. And now all the people that loved him are not getting to see him have the year that they thought he would, myself included. Alex Perez coming off a big win over Matheus Nicolau this past week. But the prospects, you got Asu Ambayev. That's a little further down. You got Tatsuro Taira. Tajiro Lembekov has now won 2 in a row. Muhammad Makayev, currently ranked 7th in the world. Amir Albazi, number 4. The title shot goes to Steve Astro Boy Erceg, currently ranked 10th in the world according to Tapology.com. Of all the guys in the world, I think that it says a lot about the Australian market. It also says a lot that maybe they want a win for Pantoja in Brazil. It's just so unusual with Amir Albazi and Makayev not having fights right now. And Tatsuro Taira even would have made a little bit more sense to me, honestly. And he's fighting Joshua Van coming up on June 1st. But just a very, very interesting matchup. And there was a lot of talk about this on the internet when the matchup was announced that Steve Erceg was getting a title shot. Mind-blowing. But do I think?
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
Certainly not. Brandon Royval can be, not Brandon Royval, Jesus. Alexander Pantoja can be taken. I think that that's what makes the flyweight division so fun right now, is that guys 1 through 10, you could conceive of being the champion by the end of 2024, especially if they're giving title shots to dudes like Usyk at such an early stage. I digress. Just wanted to talk about that kind of little state of the flyweight division. So many prospects that, you would have thought this opportunity would have gone to sooner, namely Albazi and Makayev. You thought that if they were going to push someone too early, it was going to be Makayev. I don't know if that also says something about the star power that they think Makayev has in the future, or Albazi. It's just very interesting, but, maybe whoever is the flyweight champion is going to have to run down a rung of prospects. So we got 14 fights for UFC 301. A flyweight matchup between Alessandro Costa and Kevin Borges. A lightweight matchup between Vink Pichel and Ismael Bonfim. Flyweight, Dion Barbosa against Ernesta Caracate. Lightweight, Mauricio Ruffy and Jamie Malarkey. Lightweight, Joaquim Silva and Drakkar Klose. Featherweight, Gene Silva and William Gomi of France. Elvis Brenner at lightweight against Mikbek Oralbai. Strawweight, Carolina Kowalkiewicz against Asmin Lucindo. Jack Shore taking on Joanderson Brito in a featherweight matchup. Paul Craig versus Cal Borello, 15-1 at 185 pounds. Michelle Pereira at middleweight taking on Ihor Potieria. Light heavyweight, Anthony Lionheart Smith in his 57th professional fight against 11-0 Vitor Petrino. The co-main event, the King of Rio, one of the greatest of all time, Jose Aldo against Jonathan Martinez. And the aforementioned flyweight main event between Alexander Pantoja and Steve Usyk.
Break out the red panties.
So, let's get right into it with Alessandro Costa and Kevin Borges. Borges the plus 105 underdog. Costa the minus 125 favorite. Costa 2-2 in the UFC. Wins over Jimmy Flick. Losses to Steve Usyk and Amir Albazi. That is very understandable. And he knocked out Jimmy Flick in the second round. Jimmy Flick, who has looked better than JP Buys. I often get those two confused. But, got knocked out in the third round by Amir Albazi, or finished. Lost a unanimous decision to Steve Usyk. That wasn't like a horrible differential, honestly, between the two. But then you talk about Borges. In the Contender Series, outstrikes Victor Diaz 87-43, gets taken down 5 times, still wins the unanimous decision. And then against Joshua Van, he got outlanded 156-75 in a unanimous decision loss. At first I thought I was going to no, you know what? I think I was always on board Costa from the beginning. Honestly, Costa, how can you blame him for 2 losses against only 2 of the top 4 prospects in the UFC flyweight division? One of them is about to fight for the title. And a win over Jimmy Flick, as dominant as he was, 65-14 in the striking with a knockdown. Borges, as pieced up as he got by Joshua Van, your only win being on the Contender Series.
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
I like Alessandro Costa to win 65-70 of these out of 100. Give me minus 125. Ow! Hit it. I guess that's important before the ow. And I don't know. Costa by decision plus 275, by TKO knockout plus 250. Maybe by decision. I could just see, Borges just getting battered to hell by Alessandro Costa throughout the course of this fight. And I think Costa is going to be worth a look in DFS and, a night where there's going to be a lot of options volume-wise. Next up is Ismael Bonfim and Vink Pichel. Pichel, the plus 400 underdog. Bonfim, the minus 535 favorite. Oh, we're back to the Bonfims. Let's talk about Ving Pichel first. Winner of 3 of his last 4. Unfortunately, all 3 of those wins came in June of 2019 to August of 2021. Granted, all by unanimous decision over Roosevelt Roberts, Jim Miller, and Austin Hubbard. So 1 UFC legend and 2 Ultimate Fighter veterans from a couple seasons ago. And then against Mark Madsen. Did I say a couple seasons ago? That was this year. Against Mark Madsen, last time out, lost by unanimous decision. He outstruck Madsen, but the Olympic wrestler took him down 3 times, and that was all it took, that control time, to come away with the win. Other losses in the UFC, Rustam Khabilov in his UFC debut, and Gregor Gillespie. So not too bad from Ving Pichel. Ismail Bonfim. So, wins his first 2 in the UFC, a unanimous decision, 85-45 in the striking over Nariman Abasov in the Contender Series, gets a knockdown 2, knocks out Terrence McKinney January of last year, but he gets subbed by Benoit Saint Denis July of 2023, and at the time, I don't think we were really talking about Benoit Saint Denis as being as dangerous as we quickly found out that he was. So I will give him credit for looking back, obviously, not too bad of a run in the UFC for Ismail Bonfim. Look, the real problem is not in, Ving Pichel necessarily, and it's not, that I trust Ismail Bonfim all that much. This is one that I kind of want to stay away from. The Bonfims, I don't trust the numbers that they're given over the last few fights. And Pichel, you give him credit for beating guys like Roberts, Hubbard, and Jim Miller most of all. But the problem being that all happened now. 2021 seems so recent, but that was 3 years ago. So I don't know how much to trust Ving Pichel against Ismail Bonfim. This is one that I kind of just want to stay away from. But I don't know. If I have to make it a little bit worth it, like Ismail Bonfim by knockout plus 150, that's not too bad for a minus 535 favorite. But Ving Pichel plus 400, I don't know, that's not that crazy. I just maybe go with Bonfim in DFS just because of, I think there is high scoring potential there. But otherwise, this is one where numbers-wise, I don't love, because Pichel, no matter what, it's been over the course of a few years, he still won 3 of his last 4. And it's very understandable how he lost that last one. Mark Madsen is a really, really good wrestler, world class. So, all we've seen over that stretch is someone world class at one individual thing beat him at that one individual thing. That's going to be an interesting one to watch. Next up, Dion Barbosa against Ernesta Caracate. Caracate, the plus 195 underdog. Barbosa, the minus 238 favorite. Let's talk about Barbosa first. 6-2 as a professional, nicknamed the Witch, 31 years old. Coming into the UFC from LFA and the Contender Series. Love to see that LFA experience. Her last 2 losses were to UFC level fighters, in Jenna Bishop, who's been around, this higher level of regional MMA for a bit, and Josiah Nunez. And now I want to check on Jenna Bishop real quick. Jenna Bishop, right, 38 years old. She's the grappler, does a lot of competitive grappling, has been in Bellator as well, and PFL was her last fight, April of this year, right. So, your only losses being in Josiah Nunez and Jenna Bishop, not too shabby, with a win over Karine Silva in Katana Fight 9 back in 2019. Caracate, on the other hand, 25 years old, nicknamed Heavy Handed. That's cool. Has kickboxing and boxing experience. You love to see that. Has a split decision victory over Carly Judas that happened September of last year. In that fight, she outstruck Carly Judas 184 to 168 with a takedown. I love to see that volume, on the Contender Series. Even if it's a split decision, I just think that aggression is, I think that's her route to victory, for sure. And I think if you see Karikate win this fight, it's probably by decision and just landing way more strikes than Dion Barbosa is able to. And Karikate by decision is plus 300. But I think that you have to opt for Barbosa, and she has a very impressive resume. I think that the striking of Karikate is going to be a problem, but once it gets down to the ground, if there's enough time, then it's only a matter of time. So Barbosa by submission plus 225. I like that. By decisions plus 130. I think by submission is actually a better value here. But I don't know if I'm going to include either of these fighters in DFS. Karikate, if the price works, just because of the volume striking. Next up, we got Mauricio Ruffi against Jamie Malarkey. Jamie Malarkey, the plus 185 underdog. Ruffi, the minus 225 favorite. Let's start off with Mauricio Ruffi, 9-1 as a professional, 30 years old, nickname One Shot. All 9 wins in his professional career by knockout, including on the Contender Series against Ramon Magomedov, October of last year. His only loss in his professional career was by a second-round knockout in 2019 to Manuel Sousa at SFT 18. Jamie Malarkey, on the other hand, loser of 2 of his last 3. Got knocked out by Muhammad Naimov and Nasrat Akparast. Did get the win by unanimous decision against John McDessie, outstriking him 88-83. Other wins in that stretch of time, dating back to July of 2022, Michael Johnson and Francisco Prado, both by decision. This comes down to a question of what you think Ruffi's capable of. 9 wins out of 9 professional wins, all by knockout, 9-1. That's a dangerous combo for Jamie Malarkey. His last 3 UFC losses have been by knockout. Granted, they've been to guys that have proven themselves capable of hanging around at the UFC level. But I think that this is one where you opt for Ruffi by TKO knockout. The number you're getting for that is minus 110. Hit it. I think Jamie Malarkey is going to, throw volume at Ruffi, and I think that he's going to get hit with a shot that he can't withstand. I think that, as my dude Cody over there at Blood Money MMA Bets would say, you got to see a path to how the fighter's going to win that you're picking. And here with Ruffi, I see it. Jamie Malarkey's coming in. He gets hit with something that he can't survive. So, if it was like plus 225 for Malarkey, you start to think about it just because of all the UFC experience. But I think Ruffi is someone to watch at this weight class, with the power that he has displayed over his professional career. Ruffi by knockout, and I think he went. And now I got to go back because I think Ismael Bonfim wins about 80 fights out of 100. I think Barbosa wins probably like 65 to 70 fights out of 100. Now I think Ruffi wins probably 75 fights out of 100 against Jamie Malarkey. Next up, we got a lightweight matchup between Joaquim Silva and Drakkar Klose. Drakkar Klose, the minus 185 favorite. Silva, the plus 154 underdog. Let's start out with Joaquim Silva. Winner of 2 of his last 3, dating back to October of 2022. Knockout victory over Jesse Ronson and a unanimous decision victory December of last year against Clay Guida. His last 4 losses to Vink Pichel, Nasrat Haqparast, and Arman Sarukian, and Ricky Glenn. 3 of those were knockouts. The first one to Vink Pichel was by unanimous decision. So he's been getting finished a lot. And it's not like an awesome activity level either. He did fight twice last year, so I'll definitely give him that. But only twice after 2019 in between June of 2023. Drakkar Klose, actually a year older. He will have a 1-inch reach advantage. Winner of 3 in a row and 6 of his last 7 fights against Lando Veneta, Bobby Green, Christos Giagos, all by unanimous decision. Then he gets knocked out by Beneil Dariush, March of 2022. 3 straight wins, second round knockout over Brandon Jenkins, a unanimous decision victory over Rafa Garcia, and a first round knockout slam over Joe Selecki. That's the thing, right? Is I think that this is a fight that, of all things in Brazil, you're kind of looking at the Brazilian as being the guy set up to get knocked out in this fight. I think that Drakkar Klose has been on a really good run. And Joaquim Silva, just with, it's been like so hot or cold. You're either fighting really good fighters or you're fighting people that, like, the wins don't necessarily mean a ton to me. The Clay Guida win, that's a good name to have. I just don't know what it means for you fighting a guy like Drakkar Klose who's on a 6 out of 7 run. And Drakkar Klose, to his credit, his only loss since December of 2017 is to Beneil Dariush. So the 2 wins that he's coming off of, including Rafa Garcia, two of his last 3 wins are by knockout. I think Drakkar Klose wins this fight like 70 times out of 100, minus 185, I think is an accurate number. Close by TKO knockout, plus 200, hit it. And that guy is a viable play in DFS this week, as there are going to be a handful. Featherweight, Gene Silva and William Gomi. I got to scroll down now for this one. Gomi, the minus 102 underdog. Silva, the minus 118 favorite. Let's start off with Gene Silva, winner of 2 at the UFC level. A unanimous decision over Kevin Vallejos on the Contender Series, outstriking him 87-71 with a takedown. And then against Weston Wilson, January of this year, a first-round knockout, outstriking him 25-11 and a takedown as well. Born in December 1996, William Gomi, the Jaguar. Born in June of 1997, both these guys relatively young. Gomi will have the 4-inch reach advantage. He is the winner of 3 fights in the UFC. A unanimous decision victory over Jarno Aarons. A split decision over Francis Marshall, where only 42 combined strikes were landed. And then a third-round knockout over Giannis Gamori, September of last year. Okay. I see why this fight is closely handicapped. Gene Silva. Impressive start. The Contender Series win, you just never know as much what that means. William Gomi has now gotten 3 wins at the real UFC level. And not that there's always that much of a difference between those things, but to, grind out 2 decisions with the kickboxing style that he has, and then to come back with a third-round knockout kick against Yanni Gamori, I don't know. I think that if you're getting William Gomi as an underdog this weekend, I think you take him. I think that 3 UFC wins here against 2, compared to how they've looked, I think Gomi can grind Silva to a slower pace if necessary, and not necessarily put himself in danger. So I don't know. I think this is a 50-50 fight. I like William Gomi minus 102. I also think by decision probably makes the most sense. Excuse me, always with Gomi, now that he is going up the rung of competition. We knew less about Gamori when Gomi took him on, but Gomi by decision, plus 180. By TKO knockout is plus 500. Those are close, but I just opt for Gomi by decision. If I'm going Gene Silva, I don't know, maybe you do go by knockout. Or I don't know. I think, too, it would be fine to just take both these guys on the money line, depending on where you're leaning, just because I think it's a really close fight, and I think that there's a lot of different outcomes that split pretty evenly. Next up, we got a lightweight matchup between Elvis Brenner and Mike Bick Oralby. Oralby is the minus 250 favorite. Brenner the plus 205 underdog. Orobai won his UFC debut with a neck crank against Uros Medic in the second round when only 22 strikes had been landed combined, but Orobai had already landed 7 takedowns. In the second round? Damn. Born in 1998, Elvis Brenner born in 1997. He will be at a 2-injury disadvantage. Brenner, 3-0 at the UFC level. Split decision victory over Zubaira Tukhugov, then 2 straight knockout victories over Guram Kutaladze and Kainan Krzyzewski. That was in the first round, November of last year. So, Elvis Brenner, I do not believe, and I'm riding too again on my dude Cody over there at Blood Money MMA Bets, because this has been an interesting fight to think about all week. Elvis Brenner is a junkyard dog that I don't think has the same weaknesses as Uros Medic. For that reason, when you're getting him at, what was it, plus 205? I think if you're getting him in the plus 200s, you got to roll Elvis Brenner and roll the dice that this is going to be turned into a fight that is set up for him to win. If he's him in this fight, I think it's going to be a flip of a coin. And I think that makes plus 205 super worth it. I don't think it's worth it to pick a prop in that one. We just don't know. But, I don't know. If you wanted oral by submission, is plus 450. Inside the distance, it might be oral by decision makes the most sense, plus 140, because how you put Elvis Brenner away. But I think plus 205 is fantastic. And if you're trying to work some more expensive options in this week, I think Elvis Brenner is the way to go to properly budget. Next up, we got Carolina Kowalkiewicz against Yasmin Lucindo in a women's strawweight matchup. Kowalkiewicz, the plus 320 underdog. Lucindo, the minus 410 favorite. Lucindo, winner of 2 of her last 3, 2 in a row. She lost a UFC debut by unanimous decision to Yasmin Uruguay, August of 2022. She got outstruck 86-66. Bounces back with a unanimous decision victory, dominating Brogan Walker-Sanchez. 53-29 the striking and 4 takedowns for Lucindo. Then she is now coming off an even better win, a second-round arm triangle submission over Poliana Viana, August of last year. Born in 2002. They make fighters after the year 1999, apparently, as I say often. Carolina Kowalkiewicz is 17 years older than Yasmin Lucindo. Carolina Kowalkiewicz has fought for a title against Joanna Jędrzejczyk, only 3 fights into her UFC career. Did a lot of losing after that. To Joanna, to Claudia Gadelha, Jessica Andrade, the Karate Hottie, Alexa Grasso, Yan Xiaonan, and Jessica Panay. That took her all the way up to August of 2021. People were saying, "You're done, Carolina. You're done."
But I'm not impressed by your performance, and I look forward to...
What did she do in 4 fights over the course of 2 years since then? I say, what has she done? What did she do? What has she done? A second-round rear naked choke against Felice Herrig. And then 3 straight unanimous decision victories against Silvana Gomez-Juarez, Vanessa Demopoulos, and Diana Belbita. The latter of 2, she landed a combined 280 strikes. So that's dangerous. Especially when you look at Lucindo's first loss in the UFC. Just getting outstruck volume-wise by Yasmin Uruguay. Oh, God, I'm going to hate myself for it. Plus 320 right now. With the wins that Carolina Kowalkiewicz has.
Nick, one comment, man. One comment.
No, don't be scared, homie.
I don't know. I don't think it's a 50-50 fight. But does Carolina hang on for one more, win it like this, still being born in 1985? Does she hang on and get another win 40, 35 times out of 100? Anywhere in there, that's a very acceptable range for plus 320. Hit it. Maybe I'm getting too excited here because of the rewards there and because of that winning streak for Karolina Kowalkiewicz. But plus, by decision is plus 450. If I'm going Lucindo, and I think that that's very viable too, especially in DFS, I would probably go Lucindo by submission if she really is that much better and just overwhelms Carolina, and the experience and the volume striking isn't enough to keep Lucindo at bay. Lucindo by submission plus 400, inside the distance plus 165. I don't think those are bad numbers, but I am excited by the prospect of Karolina Kowalkiewicz plus 320 in this one. Maybe that's foolish. Maybe I'll change my mind 5 times before Saturday. We'll see, but I like that number for what she's been doing over the course of the last 2 years. Next up, we got Jack Shore and Joanderson Brito. Brito, the minus 175 favorite. Jack Shore, the plus 145 underdog. Let's talk about Jack Shore first. Oh, boy. Being the underdog in these circumstances, he's won 6 of his 7 fights in the UFC. The bigger names being Hunter Azor, Ludwig Sholinian, Timur Valiev, a lot of Ultimate Fighter contestants in that stretch. And Makwan Amirkhani, his last time out, March of last year, he beat him by a second-round rear naked choke at UFC 286. His only loss in the UFC is a second-round submission loss to Ricky Simone, June of 2022. This guy was born in 1995, still very much on the young side. And in that stretch, for the fighters that he's beaten, that only loss is to Ricky Simone. Joanderson Brito, winner of 5 of his 6 UFC fights. That's counting the Contender Series where he beat Diego Lopez. His only loss by unanimous decision to Bill Algeo. The bigger wins on his resume: Andre Touchy-Feely by first-round knockout, first-round submission victory over Lucas Alexander, and then last time out, a second-round submission victory November of last year against Jonathan Pierce. Yeah, I think that I do have to go Joanderson Brito here. This is one of all things where I wish I could go the underdog because it's a reasonable number at plus 145. But I am just, I am as impressed with Joanderson Brito over Jack Shore in his run in the UFC as the odds reflect here. Minus 175, I think, is very accurate. I think that Joanderson Brito probably wins this fight 65 to 70 times out of 100. Brito by submission plus 350. I don't hate that at all. I don't think you have to pick a method of victory here necessarily. If I was going to go Jack Shore, I'd probably go by decision plus 350. I think both of these guys could be worth a look in DFS. Just because I think this is going to be an exciting fight, and I think that you could get Jack Shore at a good price, and Joanderson Brito not too expensive. But Brito minus 175 and by submission plus 350, I think that those are the best numbers. Again, I don't think you have to pick a method of victory there. It's one that I wish I could take Jack Shore in, but there's just every way I'm seeing the fight play out, I just think that Joanderson Brito is more set up to win this fight. Next up, we got a middleweight matchup between Paul Craig and Cal Borrello. Borrello, the minus 650 favorite against Paul Craig, the plus 470 underdog.
But I'm not impressed by your performance, and I look forward.
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
Nick, one comment, man. One comment.
Oh, don't be scared, homie. Come on.
That just seems like crazy handicap. And it is. There's a lot of people north of minus 400 this week, an unusual amount. Let's start with Paul Craig. I mean, my God, this guy had a 4-fight winning streak starting in July of 2020. And he had a draw with Shogun Rua before that. This guy's been in the UFC since 2016. Has fought a lot of people. Khalil Roundtree has a win over Magomed Ankalaev. Over Kennedy and Nchekwu. Then, that 4-fight winning streak where he finishes. Got Zimmerad and Tigalov, Shogun, Jamal Hill, and Nikita Krylov in a row. Then the problems start. July of 2022. He has that horrible fight against Volkan, where I don't know what the hell his strategy was, and I can't even believe that he's had this many fights since then. But I remember that fight against Volkan, where it's like, I think I had him as an underdog in that fight. And the strategy was just to not try to win the fight. You were getting outstruck, and he kept pulling guard and going for very half-ass submissions. And then the knockout loss to Johnny Walker, he does get a second-round TKO over Andre Muniz in between July last year, but then gets subbed by Brendan Allen his last time out. Cal Borello, one of the quieter but definitely faster-moving prospects of the middleweight division, born in 1993, beat Aaron Jeffrey of Bellator, the Bellator contender, who has been on this show on the Contender Series, September of 2021, hasn't lost at the UFC level. And it's been a slow, growth, but especially over the last 4. A unanimous decision win over Armen Petrosyan, over Mahmoud Muradov, a second-round submission over Michael Alexajuk, and a unanimous decision win his last time out, landing 51 strikes to Abus Magomedov's 38 with a knockdown. So, I have to defer to Paul Craig, or not Paul Craig, to Cal Borello by decision here. Cal Borello can win a fight. As far as we know, Cal Borello can win a fight landing 12 strikes. He can win a fight landing 68 strikes. That's the range that we're aware of so far. But even on the judges' scorecards, that guy can win a fight only landing 12 strikes. He's a well-rounded fighter in his takedown ability, surprisingly so. Multiple fights of 3 or more takedowns. And Paul Craig, I think, will be all too accepting of that position. And I think he'll just be, getting outstruck, not too significantly that it puts the fight away, but I think that he will be, and I think that he'll just be ready to go to his back, and I think Cal Borello will be happy to keep him there, and Paul Craig will be happy to stay there until the fight is over. So I think Cal Borello does win this fight right now, 75 times to 80 out of 100. I think that, maybe minus 650 is a little crazy. But Borello, by decision, plus 175, that is a fantastic value. Hit it. Next up, we got a middleweight matchup between Michel Pereira and Ihor Potieria. Potieria, the plus 440 underdog. Pereira, the minus 600 favorite. Let's get this out of the way. Ihor Potieria.
Don't do this. You cannot do this,
So that win over Shogun, January of 2023, I made money on that, calling Potieria by knockout. Still, though, losses to Nikolai Negumereanu, Carlos Ulberg, and Rodolfo Beato, all by knockout. He did bounce back with a unanimous decision victory over Robert Brishek, February of this year. Born in 1996, relatively young, 75-inch reach from middleweight, solid. I think he stepped in on, late notice for Michel Pereira. And he also had that fight scheduled for June of 2024 against Shara Magomedov. I forget whether that's still happening now that he's fighting Pereira. However, Michel Pereira, born in 1993, 73-inch reach. He is the winner of 7 in a row, dating back to September of 2020. This will date him, too. His last loss, February of 2020, by disqualification to Diego Sanchez. Victories over Zaleem Amadayev, Chaos Williams, Nico Price, Andre Fiallo, Santiago Ponzinibbio, the latter to which he landed a combined 217 strikes. Then a knockout over Andre Petrosky and a rear naked choke against Mikel Alexijuk. So, Potiera, he's only been knocked out so far in the UFC. I think that's kind of the way it would, like, matchup-wise, that does make sense. Marcel Pereira, I think, could win this fight in a number of ways. The real thing is he is beyond the level of Ihor Potieria. It's not an underdog, even at that number that I'm looking at. Pereira has looked amazing over this winning streak, and especially over the last two fights where he looked incredible against Andre Petrosky. And at middleweight, it's really been where he has looked incredible. Pereira should win this fight 90 times out of 100. There's no reason why, or no place in the fight where Ihor Potieria should get the better of him, other than a lucky shot on the feet. Not lucky, if Potieria catches him. I think that is Potieria's one shot by knockout, but it's not going to happen. What's going to happen is Pereira's going to win this fight, and it'll, by TKO knockout, minus 150, I think is good. By submission, plus 350, inside the distance, minus 280, I think all three of those numbers are actually pretty fair. Because once you hurt Ihor, it's however Pereira decides to finish the fight. I think it'll probably be by TKO knockout. Minus 150 seems to be the number. But I think no matter what, this fight's getting put away inside the distance by Pereira. This is a fight that Ihor Potieria very quickly could regret having taken. Next up, we got a light heavyweight matchup between Anthony Lionheart Smith, the plus 425 underdog, the former title challenger, the plus 425 underdog. Petrino, the minus 575 favorite. Let's talk about Vitor Petrino, winner of 5 in a row in the UFC, counting the Contender Series. A second-round knockout of Rodolfo Beato, beat Anton Turkalej, 7 takedowns to 5, 39-33 in the striking. Subs Marcin Prochniok, knocks out Modestas Bukauskas in the second round, and just beat Tyson Pedro by unanimous decision, getting outstruck 30-27, but landing 3 takedowns on the way. Born in August of 1997 with a 77-inch reach, Anthony Lionheart Smith will be at a 1-inch reach disadvantage and nearly a 1-decade disadvantage. Anthony Smith. Is he going to trick me into it again? So, Anthony Smith is older. He's been damaged a lot. That last knockout against Khalil Roundtree, that's almost my entire argument for Vitor Petrino. That knockout from Khalil Roundtree that so many wonderful edits were made out of, we all enjoyed it, December of last year. Even though, his last 2 wins against Ryan Spann, which kind of means less after this past weekend, but this is a guy that has only had to fight really good fighters. I do not want to sit here and dick on Anthony Smith, because he has fought, from when he fought John Jones and how he got up to that title shot, he has only fought fantastic fighters. And he's ended up losing 3 of his last 4. He's mostly won in the UFC. But now it's losses to Magomed Ankalaev. Johnny Walker is the concern, and then Khalil Roundtree, who used that to kind of, work his way up a little bit quicker. That was a knockout in the first round. I think Vitor Petrino should probably knock out Anthony Smith. I don't want to let Anthony Smith trick me into it again when I look at the quality of fighters he's faced, considering the way that he was finished by Khalil Roundtree. I think that Vitor Petrino, unfortunately, probably wins this fight like 80 times out of 100. Minus 575, probably a little crazy. Anthony Smith plus 425, I don't know. That's fun. Petrino inside the distance is minus 150, though. Hit it. I think you could go Petrino by knockout plus 100 for plus money. But minus 150 for inside the distance, I think is as good as you're going to do for a prop. I hope it doesn't happen. I'll be rooting for Lionheart. I know people on the internet love to make fun of him. I don't see what the hate is about. And sometimes I miss those things. So if there is a reason, someone please inform me. But I'm not going to be rooting for Anthony Smith to get battered again. I just think it's probably going to happen. Next up, we got the main event of the evening. And it is a bantamweight matchup between Jonathan Martinez, the minus 148 favorite, against the King of Rio, the legend, the former champion, the two-division competitor, Jose Aldo, plus 124 as the underdog in front of the very live home crowd that's probably going to be throwing God knows what into the cage. Let's start off with Jonathan Martinez. I have more to say about him. Winner of 6 in a freaking row. Dating back to October of 2021, the only loss since February of 2020 is a knockout loss to Davey Grant. He's fought good fighters in that stretch. You know, he's been in the UFC since 2018. His first 2 losses, his 3 losses are to Andre Sukuman, Andre Yule, who's been on this show, shout out to Mr. Highlight, and Davey Grant. But that 6-fight winning streak now includes Alejandro Perez by decision, Vince Morales by decision, fights where he combined for 162 strikes. Then a second-round knockout against Cub Swanson in October of 2022. A unanimous decision victory over Said Nurmagomedov put him on everybody's radar because of the quality of his strikes and the damage that they did. Said outstruck him 47-38 and took him down 3 times, but it didn't matter on the judges' scorecards. Last time out, October of last year, it was a fight where he just attacked the legs early. It was so, he was eating other shots that could have done damage. But he just did so much damage to the legs of Adrian Yanez early at UFC Fight Night Youssef versus Barbosa, where he ended up finishing him in the second round with leg kicks. Jonathan Martinez is a guy that seems so middle tier and so middle of the rung. You know, in the middle of this winning streak, before it, even as long as he's actually been around. But over the 6-fight winning streak, he's really shown himself to be more than that and worthy of this fight against Jose Aldo, which was originally supposed to be against Dominic Cruz. So that's where Jonathan Martinez is, man. He's born in 1994. Jose Aldo, born in 1986. Not only that, his first fight in the WEC was in 2008. He became champion in 2009 with his knockout victory over Mike Brown. That's when he beat Cub Swanson, was in 2009. And obviously, this guy did not do a whole lot of losing. Beat Uriah Faber, Manny Gambirian, Mark Hominick, Kenny Florian, Chad Mendes, Frankie Edgar, Chan Sung Young, Ricardo Lamas, who got a title shot. Forgot about that. Chad Mendes again loses it in very famous fashion to Conor McGregor, beats Frankie Edgar again. Ricardo Lamas did not get a title shot. That is, let's see. Yeah, he must have. Yeah. Where was I? Beats Frankie Edgar, the 2-fight losing streak to Max Holloway, Jeremy Stevens, Renato Moicano. Those are knockout victories. Loses the 3 in a row to Alexander Volkanovski, Marlon Moraes, and Petr Yan. Marlon Moraes was a split decision loss, a very close loss that a lot of people thought Jose Aldo won. Now he's won 3 of his last 4. 3 of his last 4 against Marlon Chito Vera, December of 2020. The problem is the 2 last wins, both came in 2021. Against Pedro Munoz, who he landed 114 strikes against, 75 against for a unanimous decision victory. And then Rob Font, who actually almost doubled up Jose Aldo in the striking, 149-86, but Aldo knocked him down twice. There's a unanimous decision. His last fight was August of 2022 against Marav Divalashvili. He got outstruck 57-38. Not that bad. It's a good 3 of 4. Cheetah wasn't the same. Munoz has always been around the same level. Font, who the hell knows? We just know that he's good. We have no idea how good on any given night. When you're landing 200 strikes and still losing somehow. This is one where I just got to go Martinez. I think that Martinez is definitely on his way up. Having that age difference is never a good thing. I don't want to be blinded by the magic of Jose Aldo fighting in Rio de Janeiro. It's going to be important. And I think that the Brazilian will come out on top in the main event. But I think here you go, Jonathan Martinez, because of the way that he looked in those last 3 fights, the last 2 especially, where it's just the strikes that he lands are just dangerous. He is a very unique, dynamic striker, and I think that is going to cause problems for Aldo in this latter stage where he's 37 years old. So, give me Martinez minus 148. I think he wins this fight like 65 to 70 times out of 100, probably closer to 65. As far as outcome for the victory, I would probably evenly split it for, if you're going Aldo, I think you go by decision plus 200. I think that makes the most sense. Martinez, I'd probably split it between knockout plus 350 and by decision plus 140. Plus decision probably makes the most sense, especially, or by decision makes the most sense because this is going to be a 3-round fight. I just think that at a certain point, and maybe it's an opposite fallacy, but I don't want to be blinded by Jose Aldo in a magical moment fighting in Rio de Janeiro. And now, we are to the main event of the evening.
Break out the red panties.
The UFC Flyweight Championship between Alexander Pantoja, the champion, and the minus 185 favorite against Australia's Steve Erceg, the former Eternal MMA champion, plus 154, the underdog. I touched on it a little bit. Let's talk about Steve Erceg. 2 wins of a very high quality, 1 of all right quality. His UFC debut was against David Dvorak, won by unanimous decision, outstriking him 54 to 53, 3 takedowns to 1. Alessandro Costa, he beat him by unanimous decision, outstriking him 74 to 54, 1 takedown each. Last time out, in a fight where he did have problems, for sure. It was not a flawless performance or a super dominant performance, but he did get the second round knockout against Matt Schnell. Matt Schnell, who has now lost 3 of his last 4 fights, 4 of his last 7, considering that one against Rogerio Bontorin was a no contest. Matt Schnell's only wins since August of 2019, so his only wins this decade are against Tyson Nam and Sumata Hari. That's Steve Erceg's biggest win coming into this UFC title shot. Now, we've seen plenty of times in the UFC, especially at middleweight, Sean Strickland, Chris Weidman, where you have a really insignificant winning streak that gets you to a title shot, and you end up winning because the person's looking past you. That's not the situation here. If it was against a guy who was a long-standing flyweight champion who wasn't fighting in front of his home crowd in Rio de Janeiro, even though Alexander Pantoja has urged the Rio de Janeiro crowd to be respectful and not throw glass and stuff at Steve Erceg, they're probably not going to heed that warning and are probably going to do it anyway. I don't think this is that situation. But now let's go to Pantoja. Quietly, somehow, winner of 5 in a row, 6 of his last 7 against Matt Schnell by first round knockout with very similar numbers to Erceg statistically in that matchup. His last loss being July of 2020 by unanimous decision to Askar Askarov, who hung around the top of the division for a long time. And now it's been 5 straight victories against Starboy Manel Kopp in Kopp's UFC debut, February of 2021, at Overeem vs. Volkov Fight Night. Then he gets the sub against Brandon Royval, the sub by neck crank over Alex Perez. And then decision victories over Brandon Moreno and Brandon Royval. Here's the thing. Okay, because Pantoja beat Brandon Moreno before by unanimous decision. He beat Brandon Royval by submission before that. If I'm looking at the outcome of the method of victory here, I'm not necessarily going by decision or thinking that Pantoja has lost his advantage there. You know, Usyk is a grappling specialist, but very inexperienced as compared to other Pantoja opponents, like a crazy amount. Cobb is able to keep you at a distance with his striking, for sure, even though Pantoja outstruck him. Royval and Moreno had seen Pantoja before, and they're great grapplers in their own right. Perez, who is, pulled off a lot of sneaky submissions of his own in the past, he gets neck cranked. This is not a situation where I'm looking for the upset by Steve Usyk, the plus 154 underdog. I think that's kind of an odd number. We know so little about Steve Usyk after getting that win over Matt Schnell. The oldest Matt Schnell that we've seen, by the way, in the UFC after so many good fights. That's a weird fight to get you a title shot. It still is so... I think about it as I'm trying to go to sleep some nights. The flyweight prospects that were passed over for Steve Usyk to get this title shot. There's probably other business factors that go into it. Australia, availability, any other logistical complications, sure. But this is one where I'm looking for Alexander Pantoja to win this fight 80 times out of 100, 80 to 85. Usyk is a grappling specialist. He holds his own on the feet. But Pantoja has done that better and against better opponents for a considerably longer time in the UFC. So Pantoja minus 185, solid number, hit it. And I think that Pantoja by decision over the course of 5 rounds plus 200, I don't think that's bad. But I think that Pantoja by submission plus 300 is the way to go. I think that Usyk will be, when he gets into danger or when he sees that the fight isn't going his way, will be all too eager to go to the grappling. And that is where Pantoja, I still is gonna have the advantage. And with Usyk's experience disadvantage, you look throughout Pantoja's history, I think it's set up for Pantoja to get the sub. DFS-wise, I like Pantoja. If you're going Usyk, wait to see if that line moves down a little. Outcome of victory-wise, I think you'd have to go by decision, that his grappling is actually a lot better than we even expected for this level. That's plus 450, and that he's able to hold his own in the striking, and that it probably ends up being a close fight. I don't love that, though. And DFS-wise, I think I do like Pantoja. I don't like Usyk as much, especially in 5 rounds. If you don't think the guy's going to win, I think you can better spend there. Martinez, even, for instance, whatever number he ends up being, or Vitor Petrino. Michel Pereira, I think, has to be in a DFS lineup. But yeah, very interesting flyweight matchup. For a title, when a guy, you've arguably beaten one guy in the top 15. And that's how the debate shakes out on who the top 15 of flyweight actually is. So it's interesting to get that shot right now over the guys that you did. But it's going to be interesting because Steve Usyk is stoic. He's it seems likable, very unassuming. That's a weird mode to take in against a champion who's expecting everybody to come for his neck, especially on his home turf. So, UFC 301, of course, everybody's bitching about it. There's no names on the card. We don't need names. We just need legs, arms, fists, feet, submissions, grappling. It's a pay-per-view card where a championship belt will be on the line. There's 14 fights. Folks, thanks for listening to episode 134 of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that. Follow me on Twitter at RotoBrady. Follow the podcast at Tap That MMA Podcast on Facebook, YouTube, and Spotify. Come to the RotoBaller MMA Discord starting at 4 p.m. on Saturday. Let's talk about UFC 301 throughout the night. Check out my UFL spring football gambling content coming out every week. Go Boats. Folks, thank you so much for listening. Have yourselves a great week. Enjoy these fights. Peace.